I have some.
Okay.
Call forward.
Sure. Okay.
Roll call.
Lori Zwingli,
Present.
Bob Silverfleur,
Here.
Diane Foster.
Here.
Sean Garland.
Here.
Dave McCart.
Here.
Rich Miller.
Here.
Amy Miller-Gervais.
Here.
Christian Verpest. Absent. Chris West.
Here.
All right.
Approval of the minutes. I move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are signed. Thank you. Business, do we have an update on the Citizens Police Academy?
We do. Excuse me. So I'm gonna pass these around. Everybody take one of those. I also have some copies here for anybody in the audience that may or may not want to look on. No, I do. Thank you. So, as you recall, our last time we met as a board for a meeting was in November for an actual business meeting. And at that time, I talked about, I believe I gave a general, there's enough, right?
Well, we're one short.
It's okay.
Okay.
We're good.
We'll share it with
Oh, you,
I checked it.
I thought I could count better than that.
We weren't gonna say anything.
Start on the flip side, it's got the table on it, please. As I recall, I gave kind of a general overview of what the work group had discussed in terms of the schedule and topic, and I do not believe I had this at that time, so I wanted to show you that, of course, this is a draft, but that's generally what we discussed. So the program would begin at 3 o'clock on Thursday, and you can see I won't go through each one of those, but goes through to 7 o'clock. Then we start back up on 8 o'clock at 8 o'clock Friday morning until 3 o'clock, and then we conclude with an 8 to 1 p.m. block on Saturday. And you can just kind of look at the various topics, and everything is arranged, as we mentioned in November, to kind of take the attendees from the start of a police experience through, generally speaking, to where they would be released on their own and will have experienced a sampling of exactly what the officer would have gone through, generally speaking. We will conclude each day with a wrap-up of how the day went and talk about, give a preview of what they have in store for the next day. And the final day then on Saturday, we would have lunch with probably a speaker and a little graduation, if you will, ceremony. So that's kind of an overview. And then the other page you have is it was mentioned and discussed that it should have a purpose. So the group got together and brainstormed some possibilities for a purpose statement. And so what I did is I took, as best I could, everybody's ideas and mashed them all together and tried to make a coherent statement out of the different suggestions. And so there's 2 versions there. They essentially say the same thing. One is version 2 just is a little briefer. So feel free to look at that. And as I see some of you are doing now, go ahead and make a note if you want, and then you can either just give me nothing back and no feedback, and I will assume no news is good news, or if you want to jot a couple ideas and hand me your paper, we can do that, and at some point we'll have it finalized. But that gives you the general idea of what we believe the purpose of the academy would be. And so, that is my update on that project. I don't have anything further in terms of when it might launch. We're in January, we're preparing to start the budget cycle, so I don't know that we would try to do something necessarily between now and June, although it's possible. But it's certainly extremely likely that we would try to do something this year after July 1. And Michael Jordan is here with us tonight, so if there's any particular questions or any further discussion, we can chat about that. I just wanted to give you those updates and follow through items.
I have a couple of questions from the back side, the agenda side.
Okay?
In the first column, what is FTEP?
FTEP is an acronym, of course you knew that, and it stands for Field Training Evaluation Program. So FTEP, as we refer to it, is the officer-on-officer training program that new police officers go through. So the way it works is each recruit police officer, or even a lateral experienced police officer that's new to our department, will be assigned to a coach. So another police officer that is responsible to train them in the various aspects of the job. And the term FTEP comes from an actual structured program that divides the content into different sections. And there will be, if you take a recruit police officer, they will be assigned anywhere from 3 to 5 different coaches. And each coach will cover a different section or sections of the FTEP manual to make sure that the information that the officer needs has been explained, reviewed, demonstrated, practiced, whatever they need to, so to really make sure you're using all different types of adult learning to make sure the officer knows, whether it be, hey, here's where you find statutes for vehicle, in the vehicle code if you pull somebody over, to here's how you take somebody into custody when they're not giving you any resistance, and just all kind of, here's how we make a traffic stop. And so that's all that stuff that's contained in FTEP. And each, generally speaking, each coach is a different shift, so the recruit officer will get exposed to all 3 shifts before they're released on their own.
And what's a DT?
DT stands for Defensive Tactics. I apologize, it's just out of habit, and you put those on there, and plus it saves space when you can shorten things up. So, are there any other acronyms that folks are wondering about besides those?
Might as well go for ORPAT while we're at it.
ORPAT stands for Oregon Physical Abilities Test, and ORPAT is the entrance exam, if you will, the physical portion of that. And it is developed by DPSST, which is the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, or the Police Academy folks. They developed it. And in order for a police officer to graduate from the Police Academy, they have to complete ORPAT in 5 minutes and 30 seconds or less. And so we have established that as a hiring standard. And so we'll discuss ORPAT, show you ORPAT, potentially, depending on how the schedule works, at the very minimum, show you the video and how it works, and if we can figure it out, we'll set ORPAT up and maybe let you kind of experience some of it. We probably won't do the whole deal because it can be, depending on the individual, quite physically exerting. So.
You guys are trained with the defibrillator, right?
Well, and that would be my point. Probably, yeah.
Anyone have any questions?
Well, I guess I do, just, rough agenda, I understand that, but putting on my project manager hat here, are there any contingencies here? Would poor weather affect anything, or I see police K-9 being a specific, if Officer Jens is out on a call, is there, planning for some wiggle room there, I guess, on agenda?
I really don't see anything in here that I think would have be impacted by weather. And quite frankly, I think whatever the weather is, when it's time to go do something, would just add a dose of the reality that a police officer has. Now, we have a benefit in that when the attendees experience firearms, they're gonna experience it in our indoor range, unlike what many of us did, and that was, we went outside at the range and whatever the weather was doing, that's what we shot in. And at my basic training, it was about 38 degrees and raining sideways. It was absolutely miserable. You just could hardly feel your hands. And of course, you have to try to manipulate a firearm in that weather. But anyway, so in terms of instructors like Officer Jensen, the K-9, when it's there, barring some significant issue that is going to require, potentially all hands on deck, when they're up, they're just going to be off the grid until they finish that, and we'll cover for them somehow.
And so you'd like us to go ahead and review these and give some input on what we think between version 1 and version 2? Is that?
That is completely up to each board member. If they'd like to, you're certainly welcome to. I would certainly welcome the input, and we can come up with a finished product in time to have it as a part of the package deal. But I also don't want you to feel obligated, so.
Then I would invite any of the board members that would like to have input to go ahead and write down in your box and get them to the chief.
I do have another question with regard to the agenda and the actual program. So, a gentleman or a lady goes through this program. Is there a certificate they receive? Is there an acknowledgement of some sort? What's in it for them?
Mm-hmm. So, obviously, the first thing is an enhanced level of education and understanding of, how things work. And, but at the minimum, there will be a certificate and some article of clothing or attire that they can wear to have some pride in the fact that they've completed this academy. And at the maximum, there just could be more added to that. So they're certainly going to have recognition when they complete it, and they will be given an opportunity, should they choose to avail themselves of it, to kind of be a spokesperson then, and to be seen as an alumni of the program, and encourage other folks, or be somebody that people can go to. And
Anything further? Oh. Staffing study update.
Okay.
Update for us.
So I will pass along another stack. There should be 8 piles there, one for each board member. And what did we put in there, 10 or 20 or?
10.
Anyway.
10 for each.
So there's a supply. Each board member has a supply of these flyers. So the staffing study, if I had to guess a percentage, I'd say we're probably about 75 to 80% complete, and what's really remaining is the community component. And so there's 2 parts of that are in process right now, and this is the first component, or the first piece. So next week, exactly 1 week from tonight, they will have a community input dessert, and this is really an open house format where they want the community to come in, and there will be, it's my understanding that there will be a welcome and an opening presentation by the gentleman from Matrix to kind of get everybody on again, my terminology, my understanding, kind of a level playing field about police services in Sherwood, and then they'll transition to gathering input. So I don't know exactly what the format's going to look like, but I believe there may be different table focus groups that folks can sit at and share input and have it recorded, or be some format similar to that. So that takes place, and then the second piece of that is an online survey that Matrix has prepared and posted through SurveyMonkey. And we have already begun advertising that through our social media sites. At some point, it'll be up on the website. It is not yet, but we'll need to get it posted up on our website. But it has gone out today on our Facebook and Twitter feeds, and will continue to go out until the deadline on February 5th. So this is really, from my perspective, this is the nuts and bolts of the staffing study. I mean, the data is the data, and that's very, very straightforward, like data always is. It is what it is, and you analyze it and you prepare it. But this is the component that I think is the most critical, because from my perspective, what matters most is our community. So we really need folks to come to this event, to complete the survey, so that they can put their input in, because when it's all said and done, it's the community that's paying for us right now. It's the community that's going to decide, do we want to keep paying? Do we want to pay less? Do we want to pay more? And what is it we want? And what are we willing, all those questions, that all comes from the community. The data doesn't tell you anything like that. The data only gives us a snapshot based on the time frame when the data was pulled. It says, okay, in this period, this is what the data showed. But it doesn't show what people want. It doesn't show what we could be doing. It only shows what we are doing. So there could be things that any particular member of the community could say, you don't need to do that anymore. Or they could say, hey, we would like you to start doing this. And so the data is not going to show that. The data will be informative to folks, and I think that'll be some of what they present to set the stage. But the point is, we really need the community to participate in this. So what we're asking all of you is to, like you have done, is to really market, really get folks there next Thursday. I would love nothing more than the Center for the Arts to just be absolutely packed and to be a full house of people that are interested in giving their input. And on the same token, really make sure folks have that link and they fill that survey out. We're looking for residents, business owners, and people that otherwise work in Sherwood that have some vested interest in this community to provide their input through that survey. So if, the more people we can get to take this survey, again, the better, because that's the important voice, that's the important voices and the important input from my perspective. So those are the two things on the staffing study, and then at some point there'll be a draft. Well, they'll go through and start compiling everything, and then at some point it'll conclude with a report. So, any questions for me on that?
So there was a discussion about whether or not they wanted our input as a board. Is that still, do they want our input, or are we supposed to go to the community event and give our input there?
Certainly the latter, for sure. And unfortunately, I can't really answer that. We probably need to send that to Tom. Again, as a reminder, I am not involved in this process. Certainly not calling any shots or anything, which is perfectly fine with me. And so I don't really know. I can't sit here and tell you exactly what the format for the community event's going to look like. And so I don't know how to really answer that question, but Tom may have a better answer for that. So between the chair and I next week, we can try to maybe get some information for you, and then shoot out an email to that. But I really don't know at this point. I know he spoke with your chair and asked for assistance, and so.
So could we get this electronically to
Yes.
distribute?
Yes.
And then second, you mentioned on the Facebook, which I saw today, are you pushing out with some money to make sure that it keeps cycling on people's feeds?
No, we don't generally boost, but what I have done is I have scheduled repetitive posts
Okay.
in advance. So when I go in and I look at the the backside of our Facebook page. I have 5 posts that are already set to go and scheduled, for, most of which are for this, and then I will next week schedule, some of them are for the survey link, and so then next week I will then schedule another series of posts, so it just keeps on going out until the deadline. The deadline for the survey is February 5th, so everybody needs to get that survey taken by February 5th.
So, but that will only go to people that are already, have already liked the department's Facebook, right?
And those that get it via sharing, right?
That's
So,
the best, so you can share it and then all of your contacts.
I know,
Yeah.
but if you pushed it, other people are gonna get it too, and that's why I was asking. So-
yeah, and we just, we just haven't gotten to that point where I mean, I certainly know how it works and certainly can do that, but we've just, as an organization, police department and city, in fact, that I know of, we have not gotten into that whole boosting, using, budgeted dollars to boost those posts out to broader reaches, so.
Okay.
But certainly something that can be considered. But what I'm really looking for is I shared this in another meeting this morning, and that is word of mouth is always the best advertiser, and I always come back to the rule of tens. So if every person, so if every one of you tells 10 people, we gave you all 10 flyers, and so if you all give 10 people a flyer and tell 10 people about the survey and ask them to spread the word, and then they do the same thing with 10, we get into the hundreds and potentially thousands really, really quickly. Just simple multiplication. So that is a really effective way to get it out, and so that's what we're asking folks to do.
I haven't taken the survey yet, I just got the link, and I plan on doing it, but can you answer, is there built-ins to the survey to sort of filter out non-residential people or people that might want to come on and actually give false statements?
I don't think so. And quite frankly, I don't know how you do that on some of these surveys without really programming it so that it could disqualify somebody. It would seem to me like that would be an awful lot of programming work. But there are questions initially that ask whether the respondent is a resident, business owner, or both. So it's in that way, it's not unlike the app survey that I sent out, but controls, I don't think it has any controls in it. So certainly somebody could go on there and just blah, 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 lie, do whatever they wanted to, and I don't know, unless it stood out statistically when they looked at the results, I'm not sure.
In addition to those of us passing these flyers out, are they gonna be in different places? For example, in Old Town, just stacks of them there, stores
Yeah.
and so forth?
Yeah, so go ahead.
Well, they're at City Hall and the YMCA. I haven't gone to any of the businesses in Old Town though yet.
Are you guys hitting the typical bulletin boards like at City Hall?
Yeah.
Those are already taken care of?
Alan from Clancy's was here tonight, he took a flyer, so it's gonna be up at Clancy's. So, the chamber was, Lana was at the meeting I was at this morning, so she's aware. She's already got it on Facebook, she's pushed it out on the chamber as well. A representative from the Woodhaven HOA is got it, and she's sending the information out in their email blast, so we're getting out there. We just need folks to respond. So part of that word of mouth needs to be, hey, this is really important. I mean, if you're gonna go to just one, if you're gonna be inconvenienced, this is the one to do it, so make it a priority.
If you have already addressed this, I'm sorry I didn't clue into it, how long do you envision this meeting will be? Because I know I will get asked that question.
I apologize, I have no idea.
Okay.
Again, not calling the shots on it, so.
Can
I gave input about the date and that, and that was about it. so.
All right.
Will we get an email copy of the electronics so we can blast that out?
Yes, Angie will send that out probably tomorrow, would be my
Yep.
guess.
Any other questions or comments about this?
And we have it as a JPEG and a PDF, so if there's preferences, depending on what you want to do with it, let us know. And sometimes if you're doing it online, it's a lot easier to work with a JPEG than it is a PDF. That's what we use on Facebook, so.
I'll just send both versions and.
Have you determined who from the police department is going to be in attendance at this?
No, I'm gonna have to pose that question, I'm not sure. Again, I don't know what they're gonna need and what it's gonna look like.
Besides riot officers, right?
Well, I'm sorry?
Riot officers, that's the only,
Yeah.
Okay. So the medical bag donation by the Sherwood Police Foundation. Earlier this month, the Sherwood Police Foundation donated 2 medical kit bags to the police department at city council meeting. And in the bags, they were specially packed based on requests from the police department, and they were filled with tourniquets, a pair of scissors to be able to cut clothing and dressings, a number of dressings, adhesives. They're really, they were designed initially, they were designed from a company over there in Tualatin named Sketco. And they were initially designed to be used in the military. But they had a nice application for police departments as well, and the police department expressed an interest, and so the foundation went and purchased them, and we did present them. And the reason I wanted to bring it up was because there was an article written about it and put in, I believe it was Oregon Live, and then the Gazette. I think it has not already come out, I think it's supposed to come out. But I introduced myself, I thought, as being from the Sherwood Police Foundation, but I may have been nervous enough that I introduced myself as being from the Police Advisory Board. But in any event, it was printed as being from the Police Advisory Board as the chairperson. So I thought I better let you all know that you have now been included in as part of this presentation. And I think it felt like it went well. I know the police department received it well. And beyond that, I've had no input, so I'm going to just assume that it went well. But it was nice to be able to do that for the department and to be able to outfit them with something that we hope they'll never have to use. But if they do, now they've got it. If they do need it, they've got it.
Can I add a bit to that?
Sure.
So yeah, it went very well. They are out on patrol, and we will be training with, having some training on the contents. There's a lot of things in the contents that are kind of beyond the norm for a typical first aid, so we're gonna do some specialized training with that. But Chair mentioned a few of the things, but these are referred to as active shooter kits. And so their whole design is that they are to be carried into a scene where there's multiple casualties, and you can open them up, and well, they probably won't be by a police officer, but in the military application, they're worn over the shoulder harnesses in front, and you open it up and it folds out like a quasi table where you can get to things and do what you can do. Our folks are just gonna pack them in, drop them, open them up, and go to work. They contain several tactical tourniquets that can be applied to stop bleeding. They contain bleeding control gauze pads, so they are gauze pads that have been treated with a clotting agent. So you literally pack the gauze into a wound and it immediately clots it. It's extremely effective at controlling bleeding. They contain all kinds of wraps and bandages and just things to treat traumatic wounds on victims, and enough to treat multiple victims. So they're just a neat tool, and as was said, they're the stuff you hope you never have to use. But if a shooting, a mass or an active shooter or some kind of incident like that occurs, we will certainly have the equipment to respond and get folks in there. The first thing we're gonna do, of course, is to try to stop the victim count, right? To try to isolate the shooter and address that. And then as soon as that scene is relatively safe, it will not have to be perfectly safe for us, but as soon as it's relatively safe, or even maybe before, when we have the officer resource numbers to get them in, we'll send people in with these kits to start addressing the wounded. Historically, prior to having these, our mission in an active shooter was to get in and find the shooter and stop that, and then that was it. We really weren't thinking about victims because we were singularly focused on getting to the threat. And so then the whole scene would have to be made safe, and you'd have to make sure you only had one shooter, and you had a whole lot of stuff had to take place before eventually the medics would come in. And critical minutes would go by, and with a lot of these types of injuries, you're only talking about hanging on for 1 to 3 minutes, and then in that period of time, you've lost enough blood that it's just not going to bode well or end well. So these give us the ability to do what previously we weren't doing, and that is address the threat, and hopefully at the same time have some officers paying attention to what's going on and starting to treat some victims, not so that they can get out, but so that they'll stay alive until we can get them out. Because that's what a tourniquet, that's what clotting bandages, that's what those things are designed to do, and they do very well. And they have been proven in the battlefield. So they have really good use in our world as well. And I can tell you that we have had in the last probably somewhere around 6 months, we have responded to a situation that involved some pretty significant traumatic injuries. And one of the officers that responded to assist from another agency had a tourniquet, and it literally saved somebody's life. There's no question. They applied it, they gave it to our officers, and when it got put on and made a big difference. So those are the kinds of things that the foundation is able to do for us, and we're certainly very, very grateful. So it went well. They're out there. Folks are excited to get more training and to have those at their fingertips. So thank you. Just wanted to add a little bit more about that.
Who would provide the training for the additional items? Is that in-house?
No. So the gentleman from Skedco that develops a lot of this. Maybe not develops, but works with a lot of this stuff. He's a former combat medic, and he's agreed to come in and train us, no charge, and that's just part of their service. So.
Okay. And those are routinely out in the cars?
Yep.
The bags?
I have a question. Is council foundation planning on getting additional ones eventually?
There is nothing currently in the works as far as buying another one. And I believe that once the materials are used, the police department will be replenishing any stock that's as it's used. But if we come to realize that this is something that is needed more than we are hoping, then I think the door is open for that to be considered.
And then a follow-up question is, she answered part of it, is that if they get used, you guys replace the used. What about things that need to be swapped out because they age out? Are you guys covering that too, or is that budgeted? Or?
Yeah, that would just fall under our equipment budget, and we can adjust that as need be. I think most of the stuff, from off the top of my head, has a pretty good shelf life, but certainly that'll be something we'll try. We have 2 because that's what I asked for. I felt like 2 was a good number to have. The schools are the first thing you think of, so my guess is, the SRO probably has one of them, and then the supervisor's car has the other one. If the supervisor's not there, somebody else will grab it. So they're just over $700 a piece. So it's a pretty significant investment. And like I said, I felt like 2 was sufficient. So
And I have to admit, I got nosy because I picked them up and had them for a few days before they were presented, and so I got into one because I wanted to see, what is this thing? And I was a little disappointed, I have to admit, because all the packaging it was like an MRE, a bunch of MREs. I couldn't see anything except for the tourniquets and the scissors, but other than that, these bags are so tightly packed with stuff. I mean, every nook and cranny in these things is filled, and they've got a nice little design. You open the thing, you open the pack and let it fall down, and there are two little hooks that stick out of the middle, and you slide your adhesive tape on it, and I don't, there's probably a technical term for it, I'm sure, but I don't know what it is. You pull a little lever and it goes across the end, and the tape stays there, and you can remove it easily and put it back in easily. I was fascinated. And then I could not get it back together. I had to bring it in and say, I'm sorry, I can't get it to go back together. But it was, I was fascinated by it, and I thought it was a really nice thing to be able to give to the police department to have on hand, if need be.
I have a question. I know in addition to these 2 bags, or was it just last year, the foundation donated the ballistics vest, right, for the canine? Is that, is the foundation kind of an annual thing, or how's your budget work for providing?
Well, we're a newer foundation, so we're still building up our fundraising reserves and tapping into those resources. But we have approached the chief, and the chief has graciously given us a wish list of things. And so, the priorities for certain items on the wish list are constantly changing, and so we take a look at what do we have in reserve, what can we afford to do, what do we envision as being the best use for our investment to the police department. But the idea is to support the department as best we can, and try to help promote the relationship between the community and the officers at the same time. So if it fits within our mission and our vision, then it's fair game. It's just a matter of what can we afford at any given time, and how immediate is the need.
The system is set up so that I make a grant request, and then it has to be approved by the board. And if it's approved, then they get the item and present it to us. So, again, the system is, we identify a need, I make a request, but it hasn't, there's been times when the foundation has come to me, for example, the vest for Irma. The dog in Portland was shot, and I was immediately, as soon as that news was out, I was immediately asked, does Irma have a ballistic vest? Because the foundation bought Irma. And so the foundation said, hey, does Irma have a vest? I said, as a matter of fact, she doesn't. Stand by. And so then the vest came to me, and so.
Irma has a vest now.
Irma has a vest now.
And that was an interesting learning experience too, because the ballistics packages that can go in the vest, you get to choose the package that goes in, and the level of package it depends or dictates the level of protection that the officer has, whether it be canine or human.
Good stuff.
Any questions about the bag donations, the active shooter kits? No? Okay. Counselor news. Do you have a report from the counselor that, no? Okay. No counselor news. Staff reports.
So, I've been doing a lot of talking. The last thing I want to give you is just an update on the Secret Santa program. I'm sure you probably saw the occasional blip again through social media. But this is another program that the foundation supported for us. So this is our 2nd year. We tried to be a little bit more organized and make it bigger and better. And it's really, the foundation really is the funnel. The community says, hey, we want to do this, and we funneled the program through the foundation just because that made it easier for everybody involved. So foundation showed up with the cards. We do everything on plastic because, again, it's simple and it's easy. And so our officers made traffic stops, made one-on-one contacts with folks, And we're able to bless them during the holiday season with something as simple as a coffee card. Hey, go have coffee on Secret Santa. To something as complex as, here's a $50 gift card to go help you out with your holiday because you're having a hard time or something's going on. So there's $50 to a local merchant and take the edge off of something. A couple of particular stories I can share. Some of you probably saw the story. I think it was on K2, was who ran it. So we went out late in December. I can't remember what the date was, but the captains and I and Captain Daniel had access to a Santa suit, and so we thought it'd be fun if he put on the Santa suit, he pinned his badge and put his gun belt on it. It was a rather comical appearance, perhaps scary to some, to see an armed badge-toting Santa Claus. But anyway, and so we set up and with radar and caught a car exceeding the speed limit and pulled the car over. And it was really kind of a funny thing because Santa, we hadn't given it enough thought. Santa actually happened to be driving, and so the violator looked in the mirror and they saw Santa driving this, and they're like, something's not right here, and they're right, something wasn't right. But anyway, finally got him pulled over and made contact and explained, you were speeding, and our Secret Santa program, we're not going to give you a ticket. We're gonna show amnesty, which is really kind of that part of it, and gave her a gift card. And we got it on video, and as it turned out, she was on her way through a branch of, as an arm of her church to go help somebody that was in need, and so she was able to use that card then to pay it forward, as it were. And so it was really kind of a neat story if you saw it. And then one of the other ones that I'll share with you, the last one I'll share with you, is police officers on patrol late one evening, not in the middle of the night, but it was the later evening, and he encountered a lady in her car behind the Safeway store and made contact with her, did all the normal stuff, discovered that she had just left a very poor domestic situation and was living in her car. And it was evidenced by the fact that she had pretty much everything she could possibly pack in her car. And she was really dismayed because she shared with the officer, she said, I am on fumes. I don't know where I'm going to go, because you can't hang out behind Safeway. Without any hesitation, the officer was able to pull out, because of the Secret Santa program, a gas card and give her a gas card so that she could get the gas and do what she needed to do. And it was just, for that moment, a very impactful thing for that person. So that's what we want to try to accomplish, and that's what we have been able to accomplish with the Secret Santa program. So that's your update on that.
Just out of curiosity, were any of the cards more appreciated than others?
I don't think so. And we did get some video, but every incident that I'm aware of was met with quite a bit of gratitude. I mean, it's the gesture component of it, and the fact that police officers are able to have positive interaction, which is really one of the main goals of the program, is to establish positive interactions for no reason, or even better yet, at times and places when positive interactions aren't expected. Somebody's expecting to have some kind of an enforcement action taken against them. And instead, they get $25 to the grocery store or $50 to the department store, and it just, so the program allows us to spread that goodwill and kind of, make an impact on the community. So I'm not aware that there was any particular favorite card or anything.
Any questions? Citizen comment section. Please.
I'll make a comment. I saw Lori's presentation. She looked like my daughter did when I put a busy box on her crib. She was so excited about that bag. So she did do a good job.
It was a really neat bag.
you chair Lori rather than try. I watched that on my computer, and it was great. Also during that meeting was something that I thought was very disturbing, and I don't know if you as a board have talked about it, the protesters here in town. I mean, I had no idea. I live on this side of 99, so it's a different, you know, if you're not over in that neighborhood. But 144 calls, I think I read, and I'm kind of amazed. And I don't know, you know, did any of you reach out to the people that were there testifying and, I don't know, hold their hand or Chief, would you, I mean, I know you weren't there that night. I understand there was a tragedy in town, which I'm very sorry for.
Thank you.
But it seems like seems I would have known about it before this. You know, we're kind of a small community.
Chair, do you want me to?
Go ahead.
So, a couple things by way of response. So, just to clarify, when you use the term calls, it would imply that somebody called in, and the 144 weren't calls. The 144 were CAD entries where our officers were in the area because of the situation. So I think there's been like 5 to 7 roughly incidents of protest. And there's been 144 roughly times plus, because it's hard to measure exactly, where we've just gone there and given them extra patrol to keep the peace, and we hope to keep people from showing up and that kind of stuff. So that's what that 144 is. That was us being proactive to say, we're gonna be in the area because we know stuff's going on. So that's that piece. And then the other piece I would share, I guess, is we suspected that we'd have this opportunity to have this conversation, and that is tremendous value in Ms. Taylor and certainly any community member coming up and asking questions or sharing comments. But it's a good time to remember as a board that this board does not deal with current operational situations. So the Police Advisory Board is an advisory board that focuses on future goal setting, planning, those kinds of things. Not that anybody was trying to delve into that, but the fact that this came up in council, we thought, you know, we wonder if this is gonna come up tonight. So I wanted to be prepared to kind of give you that reminder. So this is unlike what you see in some communities where there's actual citizen review panels and such. That's not the format that the board operates under. So I just wanted to give a reminder to that. So with that's what I wanted to cover. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Chair, or if certainly appreciate you coming forward. But
the one thing that I heard, and again, I just watched it and talked to several people, and was that there was a lack of confidence, is what they were saying. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people who would counter that and say, well, they have confidence, but I don't know. I thought it was something that maybe you all want to talk about.
Yeah, Tony Bellwright, live around the corner. I'm Johnny come lately, the community academy. I mean, is it going to be some way documented that, you know, citizens who can't participate in this program at least can maybe watch a video or, you know, experience it? Could it be a good tool to, you know, actually show, you know, what the police department is doing? And it said about interested need. You know, if you're interested in, you know, getting hiring, I mean, you present this to the high school. I mean, you know, people in Yorkshire that would, at least pique their interest, hey, what's this about? So, yeah, and I'd be interested in, seeing it also, seeing what's going on. So, yeah, thanks, that's fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Anything else that we need to cover tonight, Chief? And we will be adjourned. Thank you.
Very good.